The dust of the Arizona Territory swirled across the barren landscape as Zachary Phelps clutched her father's weathered pocket watch, the last remnant of a life that had slipped through her fingers like desert sand. The year was 1883, and at 22 she found herself utterly alone in the unforgiving town of Copper Springs. Her father's funeral had ended just hours earlier, leaving her with nothing but debts, threats from creditors, and an emptiness that stretched as wide as the western sky. "Miss Phelps," a sharp voice startled her. Mr. Harrison, the town banker, stood on the boardwalk, adjusting his silk vest. "I'm afraid we need to discuss the matter of your father's outstanding loan." Zachary straightened her spine. "Mr. Harrison, my father was just laid to rest today. Surely this can wait until tomorrow." "Business waits for no one, Miss Phelps. Not even grief," he said coolly. "The bank will be taking possession of the shop and its contents by week's end. That shop is all I have left." Quote, "Then you should have considered that before your father borrowed money he couldn't repay." With a polite nod, he turned and left her standing alone. The words struck harder than the desert wind. $800. That was what he'd said. She might as well have needed $8 million. With trembling hands, Zachary unlocked the door to her father's watchmaking shop one last time. The familiar scent of polish and metal filled the air, wrapping her in memories. The sign above the bench read, "Phelps Timepieces. We measure life's precious moments." Her father had believed every tick of a watch was a heartbeat. Now his had stopped, and hers felt dangerously close to doing the same. The bell above the door jingled. Zachary quickly wiped her eyes. "Shop's closed," she said without turning. "Not here for a watch," came a low, calm reply. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, trail dust clinging to his clothes. His hat shadowed his face, but she caught a glimpse of storm-gray eyes and a scar tracing his jawline. A gun belt rode low on his hips, worn but well cared for. "I knew your father," he said. "Half the territory knew my father," she replied warily. "What do you want?" He stepped forward and removed his hat. "Name's Archer Quinn. Your father once did me a service I couldn't repay. Heard about his passing when I rode into town. Thought I might pay my respects. You're too late for the funeral. Not too late to honor a debt." He placed a small leather pouch on the counter. Coins clinked softly inside. Zachary frowned. "I don't take charity." "It's not charity, it's payment. Your father fixed something valuable to me 3 years ago and refused my money. Told me I'd know when to settle the debt. I reckon that time is now." She eyed him suspiciously. "What did he fix?" Archer pulled a silver pocket watch from his vest and opened it. Inside was an inscription her father had engraved. "Time heals what reason cannot." Her breath caught. She remembered that watch. Her father had worked on it for weeks, saying it belonged to a man who'd lost his way. "How much is in the pouch?" $200. Quote, "Not enough to save the shop, but enough to buy her a little time." Still, she hesitated. Why now? Why not when he was alive? "I've been riding the territories," Archer said quietly. "Only just heard. Your father was a good man, one of the few I've known." Before Zachary could respond, the door banged open again. 3 men strode in, spurs clinking against the floorboards. The Warren brothers. Local ranchers with a reputation for cruelty. "Well, well," drawled the oldest, Silas Warren, smirking. "Miss Phelps, entertaining gentlemen callers already. Daddy ain't even cold in the ground." Archer's posture stiffened, one hand near his gun. "Shop's closed," he said evenly. Silas ignored him. "Just came to offer condolences and discuss the future of this property. I've made your father several offers. Now might be the time to reconsider." "The shop isn't for sale," Zachary said firmly. "Everything's for sale, darlin'," Silas sneered, stepping closer. "Especially when there's debts to pay. Harrison tells me you're in quite the predicament." Quote, Archer shifted, placing himself between Zachary and the men. "The lady said the shop's closed." Silas's smile faded. "Don't recall talking to you, stranger." "You are now." Something in Archer's tone made even the Warren brothers hesitate. After a long moment, Silas tipped his hat mockingly. "We'll talk later, Miss Phelps, when you're not occupied." He turned and left, his brothers following. When the door closed, silence filled the shop. "They've been pressuring your father," Archer said. Zachary nodded. "They want the land. My father refused to sell." She exhaled shakily. "Not that it matters. The bank will take everything by Friday unless I find $600 more. Archer studied her. "What will you do?" "I don't know." She stared at the half-finished watches on the bench. "I only know watchmaking, and no one will hire a woman for that." Archer was quiet for a long moment. "Your father taught you well?" "Since I was tall enough to reach his workbench," she said softly. He nodded slowly. "I might have a proposition for you." Her eyes narrowed. "If this is another kind of proposition, save your breath." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Maybe amusement. "Nothing improper. I'm heading to Santa Fe. There's a man there who'd pay handsomely for someone with your skills. He won't care whether you wear trousers or skirts." "Santa Fe?" she repeated. "That's nearly 300 miles. 10 days ride, give or take." "You expect me to travel across the territory with a man I just met?" "That's madness." "More mad than staying here with nothing?" he countered. "Those brothers won't stop. And once the bank takes this place, what then?" She wanted to argue, but deep down she knew he was right. "Why would you help me?" she asked finally. "The truth, this time." Archer's gaze darkened. "Because I owed your father, and because I've seen what happens to women left alone in towns like this. Wouldn't sit right, walking away." Zachary looked at the watch in her hand, its steady ticking echoing in the silence. Maybe time was offering her a second chance, if she was brave enough to take it. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "I leave at first light, day after tomorrow," Archer replied, setting his hat back on. "If you decide to come, be ready. I won't wait." When he left, Zachary locked the door behind him and leaned against it, heart pounding. Santa Fe seemed impossibly far, yet so did any kind of future here. That night, beneath the lonely creak of the shop's clock, she made her decision. She would go, but she would not trust her fate entirely to a stranger named Archer Quinn. The first light of dawn spilled across the horizon as Zachary Phelps stood outside the livery stable, clutching her father's old saddlebag. The morning air bit through her worn jacket, and her heart pounded in her chest. She hadn't slept at all. She'd planned to buy passage on the stagecoach to Santa Fe, but the ticket agent had shattered that plan the day before. "Next coach leaves in 3 weeks," he'd said. And that's if the Apache don't stop at first. 3 weeks was too long. The bank would have her father's shop by then, and Silas Warren would have her cornered with his false charm and dangerous intentions. So she had only one option left, Archer Quinn. When she spotted him leading 2 horses out from the stable, she almost turned and ran. But he looked up and saw her, his blue-gray eyes calm and unsurprised. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, tightening a strap on his saddle. "I changed my mind." He nodded once. "Good. We ride in 5 minutes." Zachary hesitated, shifting the heavy saddlebag on her shoulder. "My father's tools are inside," she explained quickly, defensive. Archer's gaze softened just slightly. "Wouldn't expect you to leave them behind." He secured her bag onto a sturdy mare and handed her the reins. "Ever ridden before?" "Enough to know which end's which," she answered. That earned the faintest smile from him. "Stay close and do as I say. Territory between here and Santa Fe isn't forgiving." They rode out in silence, the town of Copper Springs shrinking behind them, the empty desert stretching endlessly ahead. For the first few hours, Zachary's muscles protested with every jolt of the saddle, but she bit back the pain. Pride wouldn't allow complaint. By midday, they stopped at a narrow creek, and Archer handed her a canteen. "Drink," he ordered. "You'll dry up faster than these horses if you don't." "I'm fine," she said stubbornly. "Sure you are," he muttered, but his eyes held faint amusement. They shared a meal of jerky and hard bread before riding again. The land changed as they moved, red dust giving way to scrub plains and rocky hills that rose like broken bones from the earth. By sunset, they made camp near a cluster of mesquite trees. Archer worked with quiet precision, building a small fire, tending to the horses, checking his gun. He moved like a man who'd done this 100 times, his every motion practiced and deliberate. Zachary watched him while pretending not to. He rarely spoke, but there was something about his calm that steadied her. Something dangerous, yes, but also deeply sure of itself. A kind of man she'd never met before. "Get some sleep," he said as the stars began to appear. "We start early." Zachary lay on her bedroll, staring up at the vast night sky. "Mr. Quinn," she said softly. He grunted from where he sat, cleaning his revolver. Why did my father refuse payment for fixing your watch?" Archer paused, his hand stilling on the gun. "He said some debts can't be paid with money." "What kind of debt did you owe him?" There was a long silence. Then, in a low voice, he answered, "The kind that matters." Zachary turned that over in her mind long after his breathing had slowed. Who was Archer Quinn, really? The next few days fell into rhythm. Dawn rides, midday halts, silent meals, and long evenings under the stars. Zachary grew tougher with each passing mile. She learned how to water the horses, how to read the land, and how to find shade where there seemed to be none. Archer was patient, in his own quiet way. He showed her how to make a fire from dry brush, how to spot coyote tracks, and how to wrap her hands in cloth when the rains began to blister her palms. On the fifth night, as the fire burned low, she found courage to ask the question that had been pressing on her mind. "You're running from something, aren't you?" Archer looked up slowly, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "What makes you think that?" "The way you watch the horizon," she said. "You always check behind us before you sleep." A faint smile curved his mouth. "You're observant. Your father said you had a sharp eye." "You didn't answer," she pressed. He stared into the flames for a long time before replying. "A man like me, he's always running from something." That wasn't an answer either, but she didn't push him further. Just before dawn, Zachary woke to the sound of hoofbeats. Faint but deliberate. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding. Archer was already awake, crouched low near the fire. He held up a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. The sound grew louder, then stopped. Archer moved like a shadow to his horse, retrieving his rifle. "Stay low," he whispered. "If I tell you to run, you ride east and don't stop." Zachary's breath came fast and shallow. The desert was still, the only sound her own heartbeat hammering in her ears. Then, from the darkness, a voice called softly, "Quinn? That you?" Archer relaxed a little. "Identify yourself?" "Moses Peters," came the reply. "Figured that was your firelight." An older man stepped into view, leading a mule laden with packs. His beard was gray and wild, his eyes sharp. "Peters," Archer greeted him. "You're a long way from Fort Defiance." "Trading with the Navajo," the man said, setting down his packs. "Got word that might interest you." Zachary sat up, pulling her blanket around her shoulders as Archer gestured for the old man to sit. "What kind of word?" Archer asked. "Marshall's men were asking about you in Fort Defiance," Peters said. "3 of them, heading west. Said you took something that didn't belong to you." Archer's jaw tightened. "When?" "2 days ago. They're riding hard." Zachary's heart dropped. "Who's Marshall?" she asked. Peters glanced at her, then at Archer. "You ain't told her?" "Not yet," Archer said quietly. "Then you best," the old man muttered. Zachary rose, her fear hardening into anger. "Told me what?" Archer looked at her then. Really looked, and the calm mask he always wore cracked just a little. "Marshall Reed is a cattle baron from Texas. 3 months ago, I took something from him." "You stole from him?" she demanded. "I took back what was mine," Archer said flatly. "His men bushwhacked me, stole my herd, left me for dead. When I recovered, I reclaimed what was rightfully mine." "And now they're hunting you," Zachary whispered. "Yes," Archer admitted quietly. "And now they'll hunt us both." The realization settled over her like the cold desert air. She had escaped Copper Springs, only to ride straight into another danger. "What do we do now?" she asked. Archer stood, scanning the horizon. "We move. They'll track us by sunrise." He kicked dirt over the fire, the embers dying to black. "Miss Phelps," he said, his voice steady, "if you come with me from here, there's no turning back." Zachary looked down at her father's watch in her palm, its steady ticking a heartbeat against her skin. She closed her fingers around it. "Then I suppose I'd better keep up." By sunrise, the desert wind had shifted, carrying the sharp scent of rain. Archer Quinn rode ahead, scanning the horizon with wary eyes. Behind him, Zachary urged her mare to keep pace, her heart thundering with every mile. Somewhere out there, Marshal Reed's men were closing the distance. For 2 days, they rode through rugged canyons and dry riverbeds, following narrow trails only Archer seemed to know. He spoke little, but his tension was visible in the tightness of his jaw, the constant sweep of his gaze over the empty land. When they stopped at dusk beside a rocky stream, Zachary noticed him wince as he lifted his saddle. "You're hurt," she said sharply. "Old wound," he muttered. "Ain't worth fussin' over." She didn't believe him. "Sit down." "Zachary." I said sit. Something in her tone must have reminded him of her father because he obeyed, lowering himself onto a flat rock. When he unbuttoned his shirt, she saw the truth. An angry, half-healed bullet wound along his left side. "It's infected," she said, pulling a small wooden box from her saddlebag. Inside were her father's medical supplies, herbs, salves, thread. "You should have told me." "Had other things on my mind," he said quietly. "Like getting yourself killed?" She snapped, cleaning the wound with whiskey. Archer chuckled under his breath, even as he flinched. "You sound just like your old man." "Then maybe you should listen." She wrapped the wound carefully, her fingers trembling slightly. "You risk your life for everyone but yourself." He watched her in silence until she finished. When she tied the last bandage, he said softly, "Your father saved my life once. I guess you're just returning the favor." Zachary sat back, her heart still pounding. "He never told me about you. Asked me not to make it known. I wasn't proud of the man I was then. What kind of man were you? The kind who made enemies faster than friends. The kind who thought guns solved everything." His eyes met hers. "Your father showed me otherwise. Said a man's worth isn't measured by how many fights he's won, but by which ones he walks away from." Zachary smiled faintly. "That sounds like him." A sharp sound shattered the quiet, distant hoofbeats echoing across the rocks. Archer was on his feet instantly, pulling his revolver. "They've found us." "How far?" she asked, her voice tight. "Close." He grabbed the horses, reins. "We head for higher ground." They mounted quickly, racing through the twisting canyon trails. The sound of pursuit grew louder, shouts carrying through the narrow walls. Bullets whined past them, striking rock and dirt. "This way!" Archer called, veering left into a narrow pass barely wide enough for their horses. Loose stones tumbled beneath their hooves as they climbed. When they reached the ridge, Zachary risked a glance back. 3 riders, dark shapes against the fading sun. "Marshall's men," she gasped. Archer nodded grimly. "And they ain't stopping till we're dead." They rode hard until night fell, finally stopping in a grove of juniper trees. The horses were lathered and trembling, and Zachary could barely feel her legs. Archer dismounted slowly, leaning against his horse for balance. The bandage at his side was soaked through. "You need to rest," she said. "Can't, not yet." She stepped closer, gripping his arm. "You're bleeding, Archer." He looked at her then, tired, stubborn, and fiercely alive. "I'll rest when we're safe." Zachary's voice softened. "Then let me help you get there." He said nothing, but his gaze lingered on her, something unspoken passing between them in the dim firelight. The next day, the landscape began to change. Greener, the air cooler. "Santa Fe's just beyond those hills," Archer told her. Relief flickered through her exhaustion. But before hope could take root, she spotted movement on the ridge ahead. 4 riders. "They're waiting for us," she whispered. Archer reined in his horse, eyes narrowing. Marshall's men, and one of them's Y. Reed, the marshal's enforcer. "What do we do?" He drew his revolver. "You and the horses head for those trees. I'll hold them off." Quote. Zachary's heart lurched. "That's suicide. Better me than you." "No!" she snapped. "I'm not leaving you." Archer turned in the saddle, his expression softening. "You've got more to lose than I do." "Then you don't know me at all," she said fiercely. "We finished this together." The gunmen were closing in. There was no more time for argument. Archer took a deep breath and looked at her, his voice low but firm. "Then do exactly as I say." They galloped toward the riders, dust and fear rising around them. Gunfire cracked through the still air. Zachary ducked low, the wind tearing at her hair. Archer's shots rang out. Precise, deadly. One man fell, another's horse bolted. But why Reed kept coming, relentless. When they reached an open stretch of ground, Zachary yanked her horse to a stop. "Why?" she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Wait!" The man slowed, confusion flickering in his eyes. She raised her hands. "You want Archer Quinn? Fine, but hear the truth first." Archer's jaw clenched. "Zachary!" She ignored him, turning to why. "He didn't kill Marshall's son out of malice. It was self-defense. Your boss's men ambushed him first. I have proof." Why's brow furrowed. "Proof?" "My father's records," she lied boldly. "Names, dates, the men who confessed to stealing Archer's cattle. They're with a lawyer in Santa Fe. If you kill him now, that evidence will surface. Marshall Reed will know his son wasn't the man he thought he was." For a tense moment, no one moved. The desert wind whispered between them, carrying the scent of gunpowder. Then Wise spat in the dust. "You've got 1 day to show me those records. After that, I come hunting." He turned his horse sharply, signaling his men to follow. As they disappeared into the horizon, Zachary's strength gave out. Her hands shook violently on the reins. Archer rode to her side, disbelief in his eyes. "You lied," he said quietly. She nodded. "Yes, and it worked." He exhaled, a short, stunned laugh breaking from his chest. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the craziest." "Maybe both," she said, managing a weary smile. They rode into Santa Fe that evening, dust-covered and exhausted. The streets buzzed with life, the golden light of lanterns flickering across adobe walls. For the first time in weeks, Zachary felt the weight of safety. Fragile, but real. A kind doctor tended Archer's wound, insisting he rest. As he drifted into sleep, Zachary sat beside him, holding his hand. "You told me not to follow you," she whispered softly. "But I would have, no matter where you went." His eyes opened briefly, a faint smile touching his lips. "Then I reckon I'll stop running," he murmured before sleep claimed him. Days passed. The marshal's men never returned. Zachary found work repairing watches for a local jeweler, her skill quickly earning respect. Archer recovered slowly, helping the town marshal with small jobs, guiding travelers, tracking thieves. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, he found her outside the shop, polishing her father's watch. "You said time heals what reason cannot," Archer said, his voice quiet. Zachary smiled, closing the watch and meeting his gaze. "Then maybe it's finally done its work." He took a step closer, his eyes searching hers. "When I told you not to follow me, I was trying to protect you." "And I told you you'd hear me behind you anyway," she said softly. "Guess I was right." Archer smiled then. A real smile, one that reached his eyes. He reached for her hand, calloused fingers brushing hers. "Zachary Phelps," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "How do you feel about a man who's tired of running?" She looked up at him, the setting sun bathing them in gold. "I feel like I've been waiting to hear you say that." He leaned in, the world around them fading into silence as his lips met hers. A promise born of danger, loss, and the kind of love the frontier rarely allowed to survive. And as the last light of day vanished beyond the desert hills, the steady ticking of her father's watch marked the beginning of a new time. One measured not in seconds or hours, but in heartbeats shared between two souls who had finally found home.